Down goes Spicer. Maybe. I don't know. According to a recent report in Politico, the White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, of course, is now leading a search for his own replacement. That's kind of sad when you think about it. Now, either Spicer might be tired of being under the bus, or maybe he just wants to go back to his true calling, being the White House Easter Bunny. Very lucrative job. Everybody wants to be the bunny. Either way, he's
that was a gig where it was actually appropriate for him to hide in the bushes.
For sure.
Like, surprise, it's Easter Bunny. That would have been an appropriate time for him to hide in the bushes.
Exactly.
I'm surprised that guy. I mean, I guess he is slowly snapping, but I really thought he was gonna snap like completely early on. I was calling it. I was like, he's gonna snap. And he kind of hasn't completely snapped yet.
I don't know. He's having a slow mental breakdown, I think. That's just my opinion. No proof of that.
But I thought he was going to jump ship, man. And, I mean, it looks like he slowly is. But, I mean, I thought it was going to happen a while ago.
I don't know. Like, he might be running into the same problem as Reince Priebus. Nobody's dumb enough to replace him.
It's a good point. It is a good point.
So, Politico notes that he's been reaching out to different people, rather unsuccessfully, I might add, to fill this very important position. Now, last week, Spicer and White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus reached out to Fox News contributor Laura Ingraham about the role of press secretary and Daily Mail editor David Martosco about the role of communications director, according to a White House official. Now, Spicer and Priebus have had preliminary discussions with Ingraham, and Martosco met with Chief Strategist Steve Bannon last week, according to that same official. Now, here's their response, right? Ingraham declined to comment. In a phone call, Martosco said, "I can't hear you," and then hung up. He did not respond to an email. Okay, well, hey, man, it seems like there's a lot of people chomping at the bit to take over for Spicy, right? Seems like everybody wants that job. You also had other news outlets reporting, and I think I might have talked about this before, that Fox News host Kimberly Guilfoyle, whose name was floated back during the transition, was not interested in this position and has not been interviewed, according to people familiar with the effort. Again, I don't think people are stupid enough to want to take this job, especially considering how Spicy has been treated throughout this entire thing. It's almost like you would feel bad for him, but then you realize this guy's also a jerk. So he doesn't really deserve a whole lot of sympathy. But at the same time, working for Trump is an impossible job. Because he goes out and he says something, he sends everybody out to say a certain talking point, and then 2 hours later on Twitter, he completely blows that apart and then makes you look like an idiot or a complete liar.
Well, then you have to attempt to clean up his mess.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a disaster. Like,
sad.
I think that, and more people are realizing now that if they get involved with this administration, they're committing political suicide, and they don't want to commit political suicide.
Right.
So they're just keeping clear. I mean, these are people, in that arena. They have a long-term foresight because they want to have a career. They're not just going to grab a quick paycheck or whatever. So they're thinking, like, this guy is going off the rails. People are thinking he may or may not get impeached. I, of course, hope he does not get impeached because I don't want to see President Pence. I think would be way worse off. We've talked about that before.
We have.
But, I think that more and more people are realizing, like, this would be political suicide. And all the more reason you really need to pin the Republicans to Trump because, look at how grossly unpopular this guy is.
But you also have to realize, because I know the Democrats are just focusing on doing that, which that should be part of a strategy, but at the same time, they're also failing at the other part of the strategy and offering a vision to counter the Republican narrative. We don't see that, especially.
Oh, of course.
Let's tie it into the race that's going to happen tomorrow between Karen Handel and Jon Ossoff, right? Jon Ossoff is against Medicare for all, and he's also against raising taxes on the rich in order to pay for certain things, right? Karen Handel doesn't believe that there should be a living wage. So, I mean, this is what we have. We have two terrible candidates against each other that almost nobody wants. And the Democratic establishment is saying, look at how great this John Ossoff guy is. You better float Georgia, or you better flip the 6 in Georgia. Vote your Ossoff off, or whatever. vote your Ossoff. That was hard to say.
Yeah, I think that's
super hard to say.
Yeah, I saw that trending on Twitter.
I was like, oh god.
And then you know, people love to blame Bernie Sanders for it. They're like, oh, Bernie Sanders was saying he's not progressive. It's like, well, why are you shooting the messenger? He's not, and this is the problem. And if he loses, it's because people aren't going to see an alternative.
Right.
And, you know, and you're blaming the messenger for that. You're blaming Bernie for that.
Yeah. What is he supposed to do?
And that's part of the problem.
What is he supposed to do? Give his heartfelt endorsement to somebody that he doesn't necessarily agree with 100%? I mean, he already did that during the campaign. What more do you want?
Yeah, right? No shit.
Especially since the Democratic Party hasn't done anything in kind. He didn't help. They didn't help the guy in Montana. Rob Quist didn't help him. Didn't help the guy in the Kansas special election. DNC didn't do anything for those two candidates that were Bernie Sanders backed. So why should Bernie Sanders go and back John Ossoff? Because he has a D next to his name? But back to the whole point.
That's what they want.
Yeah, it's true. But back to the whole point of tying Republicans to Donald Trump. Well, nobody wants to be tied to him. And the few people that are, well, they're not seeing a whole lot of different options. That's why Reince Priebus is probably not going to leave. And that's why Sean Spicer, he's actually moving up in the administration. Taking over, I believe, for Dubke, who actually did resign. Now, let me go back to the article here. As to why people are jumping ship, right, from the communications department. Trump has been quick to blame his communication shop for his administration's troubles, with the president and senior staff expressing their displeasure with the way Spicer and Dubke handled the response in the hours following the firing of FBI Director James Comey, according to two White House sources. Despite the abrupt nature of the firing, Spicer and Dubke caught heat for failing to line up surrogates to go on television and for not having talking points that called out the hypocrisy of Democrats who criticized Comey when he was investigating Hillary Clinton. As Trump has continued to lash out at his communication team amid the intensifying investigations, the White House has pulled back from daily on-camera press briefings, with Spicer and Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders increasingly conducting gaggles with reporters that include no cameras and no audio. And when asked about it, Steve Bannon, interestingly enough, had said, Sean got fatter. That's why we're not doing video and audio briefings anymore. Sean just got fat.
Man.
Great transparency.
Bannon is not, first of all, Steve Bannon is not somebody that should be body shaming anybody else. I mean, I'm not trying to, hey, God knows I'm not perfect, not claiming to be. But Steve Bannon, come on, man. He's got a boozy nose. He looks pretty unkempt. He should not be body shaming anybody else. Neither should Donald Trump if we're on that point. But yeah, I mean, he's
definitely a 5 out of 10, maybe a 4.
It's funny because we sometimes forget, because there's so much messed up stuff going on right now, and the corporate media is such a miserable failure, maybe now more than ever before. I mean, because they get progressively worse as time goes on.
The only thing progressive about them.
Right, and there's nothing progressive about them. But we sometimes forget how toxic to press freedom this administration is in a manner that's really repulsive. I mean, having closed doors event, prohibiting journalists from entering areas where journalists have the right to be, shutting journalists down when they're asking a question. And this, of course, trickles down. This is why journalists at Dakota Access Pipeline are facing charges for doing their job. It's all connected, and it starts at the top. And I think that, sometimes we're so frustrated with the corporate media, and justifiably so. I'm not saying to forget about that lens. It is incredibly important. However, we also can't forget how truly repulsive and disgusting this administration is to that press, and it's straight up Orwellian. And sometimes we forget about that because of all the other awful stuff that's going on too, and that awful stuff maybe we have more power to do something about. But this is important too.
It's like you can point out the mistakes of the mainstream media without vilifying them and turning them into, like, calling them, all the horrific things that Donald Trump, for example, has called the media, traitors to the country. No, they're not traitors to the country. They might not be doing the best job, and we've certainly called them out on it. But call the free press traitors to the country, well, that doesn't work out either. That's not true either. And that's, and again, a good example of the extreme rhetoric that we have against a free press. I mean, did you see the poll where 42% of Trump supporters think it's okay to body slam a reporter? Mm-hmm. That's insane. And that speaks right to the toxic atmosphere that this administration and Republicans in general have created during this last campaign, at least. But I think it stretches further back because I think when you go back to when Fox News was created, and there are even right wingers out there who are conservatives that are like, we created this monster by creating this conservative bubble where we only have this narrative, and that everyone else who has a different narrative, well, they're wrong. They're not only wrong, but they're terrible for the country. They're against America, and that was evidenced by the old iteration of Fox News under Roger Ailes, which I think they're attempting to change that narrative a little bit more to I guess be more of a new CNN. But still, this is the Fox Newsification of America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's, again, we're just seeing the effects of that. As far as what they're doing with the press and transparency, I mean, it's great press transparency, Donald. Seriously, I mean, you gotta love their appreciation for openness and accessibility.
It's that of a dictatorship.
Yeah, it's that of. I think he might be. It really is. I like, not to get all like Russia, right? But it's kind of like the tactics that Vladimir Putin has used to the press. Mm-hmm. And it's not wrong to make that comparison, even though they have tamped down
something similar.
Exactly.
Bush did something similar.
Right. Anywhere where you have a right-wing authoritarian government, you end up they end up curtailing press freedoms.
Yeah. No, it's totally true, man. And sometimes
propaganda.
we forget about that because we point out the flaws of the establishment as a whole, Republicans and Democrats, and rightfully so. And we point out the flaws of the corporate media, again, rightfully so. They are the powerful, they are the elite, and they do have a very, very skewed and compromised agenda. I would never say that's not the case. However, it's important not to lose sight of the fact that, we had an administration during the Bush years that would fax talking points over to the corporate media, and the corporate media went along with it. We have an administration now that bars media from things where media needs to be. Right. And that is just, that is the most undemocratic thing you can do. Having a compromised media is one thing. Having a media without any access, and to get access, they have to basically kiss ass and not ruffle any feathers.
Right.
We've accepted this as normal, and the media is partially to blame.
Yeah, and it's not normal
for it themselves. They've let this happen, but this is not normal. And when you've normalized this for as long as we have, when you see these reporters winning awards because they didn't ruffle any feathers, because they did the type of journalism that the establishment smiles upon. I think it was actually George Orwell that said it. Journalism is the stuff that the powerful is afraid to see in print. Everything else is just PR. That's a paraphrase, but that's basically what he said, and he's absolutely 110% right. But, when you've had a passive, compromised corporate media for as long as we have, it's going to lead to something totally dictatorial and authoritarian like what we have now with Donald Trump.
Right.
And it's important to not lose sight that this is disgusting and this is not normal and this is the Frankenstein.
And last point on this one that I'm going to make is that, I mean, people forget that journalism was all about muckraking. It was about causing problems for people in power. That's what journalism has always been. I mean, you think it's bad now. Donald Trump should go back to the 1800s in the middle of muckraking journalism. And let me tell you what, he would not have been very happy with the press then either.
Believe me.
Believe me. Sad.
Believe me.
Look at the failing New York Times. Took me 2 weeks to get it from New York, but now I read it and I'm sad. Look at the things they said about me.
Sad.
Sad. But we need to do something to change this media environment. And as far as propagandists like Sean Spicer, he will be moving into a new role, from what I'm reading, as senior to both or at least he's been pushing to get into a new role, to serve as senior to both the communications director and press secretary. So he actually wants to get elevated. Now, that same White House official that gave the story to Politico said Spicer should be elevated, and if he's not, I would not blame him for leaving. The president owes him this much for all he's done for him. It seems like Trump would almost solid for like, hey, thanks for cleaning up all my messes that I go out and create every single day. He says the president owes him this much for all he's done. Sean is indispensable, and I think the president knows that. So we'll have to see within the next few days, whether or not somebody's
knows that.
Yeah. I don't think he knows that anybody is indispensable. I'm pretty sure he's like, if you're not useful to me, under the bus you go, out, gone.
Yeah, he's a by-the-book sociopath.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he is.
So whatever perceived loyalty that you think that Donald Trump has for his subordinates doesn't actually exist. And I think Sean Spicer is going to find out soon, one way or another. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.